Hi, welcome to my latest video. Happy New Year to all my viewers and those of you who subscribe to my channel. I thought I'd do a quick video looking back at the past year, showing what I did to my car in 2021 and also show you some of the developments that I'm working on at the moment and the projects that I'll be doing this coming year. A massive thank you to all of you who subscribe to my channel. I've just reached 3,000 subscribers, which is a really good milestone to reach. It all started back in 2016 when I uploaded a video of my car driving up Kirkstone Pass in the Lake District. And in September 2020, I reached 1,000 subscribers. In May last year, I then reached 2,000 subscribers, and now we're at 3,000 subscribers. So it's really good, and a massive thank you to all of you who subscribe to my channel. It really inspires me to make more interesting content for you all to watch. In 2021, I did some interesting videos on my light bar. I fitted my 42-inch light bar there and made some brackets for mounting that. I also looked at rear light theft. The rear lights on the Freelander 2 are quite easy to remove from outside the car, even when the car is locked with the boot shut. So I made a video showing how easy it is to steal those lights and also how to protect yourself against having your lights stolen. I got a remap on my engine finally at Empire Tuning, which has really increased the torque and power. The car is running so much better now. I also changed the oil in the transfer box or front differential. I tried to use an Apple AirTag as a vehicle tracking device, and I also renewed a rear wheel bearing in this back wheel on the passenger side, and made 3 videos showing the entire saga of changing that bearing. I could have just gone to the garage and paid a couple £100 and got them to do it for me, but I decided to struggle for a week and do it myself. It's always nice to do jobs yourself. It's even nicer if I can film it and show you all what I did. Those of you in the UK will also not forget the fuel crisis that we had due to the HGV driver shortage, and I showed a video where I nearly ran out of fuel. So let's have a quick look now at some of the projects that I'm currently working on. In no particular order, we have the Haldex. So here is the Haldex active differential that I bought second hand. This will be dismantled very soon as part of a 3-part video series to celebrate reaching 3,000 subscribers. What I'm going to be doing is, in the first video, I'll dismantle this so we can see how it works, what goes on inside, what you need to do when you are servicing one of these. In the second video, I will actually service the Haldex on my car currently, so I'll probably remove the one from the car and give it a partial strip down to replace the filter and any other consumable items that need to be changed. And in the third part, I'm going to see if I can actually make a Haldex controller so that I can take control of this and lock it up as a sort of a center diff lock like the older Land Rovers had, and actually some of the newer ones, the newer Discoveries and that, have an electronic diff lock, so you can just program it up rather than actually moving a lever like on the old Defenders. You'd just press a button or set a program and it would lock or unlock the diff. Now, as standard on the Freelander 2, we have the terrain response mode, so what goes on in the diff is anyone's idea really. The computer just works it out, locks it if it thinks it needs to. I would prefer to actually have some kind of manual override on that. So very, very simply, what I'm planning to do is connect up a switch to the solenoid in here, which sends fluid to the clutch pack, the plates that are in here, to lock it. So if instead of the solenoid the circuit is driving something like a big power resistor, it will think it's still got its solenoid connected, and it'll be quite happy sending current through that, but it won't lock the diff. What I'll do is I'll then do that with a switch to actually force the solenoid shut or open to lock or unlock the diff. That's the idea. Will it work? I have no idea. Be an interesting project to do. Other things that I'm currently working on, or have been working on and have had to put on the back burner, are my Webasto. Okay, so this is a prototype, a sort of breadboard that I created with a Webasto diesel fired heater on it, and then various electronics. We've got some relays, we've got some a remote control unit and a USB connection device there, so can actually control that using a remote control or using some diagnostic software on the laptop. Okay, we'll have a little fuel tank here, which put diesel in, and I did, I think, 3 videos. It worked. I just need to fit it to the car, and this has been sitting here waiting and waiting and waiting, and I know that many of you have also been sitting and waiting, wondering when I'm going to get on with it. Well, this is the year. As well as the Webasto, another major project which everybody is waiting patiently for is my Snorkel. Okay, so the Snorkel, I've done 4 videos, I think, on developing a snorkel to go on here, and that will then go up there to some sort of air intake, like a raised air intake up there. That project again had to be put on hold due to too many other things going on. What else am I working on at the moment? Okay, I'm going to be putting some checker plate on my bonnet. Okay, so here on the bonnet I'm going to put 2 strips of checker plate. So I've marked out the shape on this piece of wood. I'll be cutting that out as a template and then cutting this aluminium checker plate and then riveting that to the bonnet. Why am I doing that? Well, I think it will look good, and it will also give me a surface to stand on if I ever need to climb up to sort of tie things onto the roof or whatever, really. But it is mainly being done for looks. I've recently bought this, which is a steering lock, and I'm going to be doing a video on how the steering lock works and how you can unlock the steering lock if it locks and won't unlock. There's also this device that I've bought, which is an emulator. And the idea is that fools the ECU into thinking it's got a steering lock connected which is working. You can't use that to unlock a physically jammed, locked steering lock. Okay, so these are slightly misleadingly sold as a fix for the steering lock locked error. This will solve the problem if the error is a false reading. So if the computer thinks the steering lock is locked when it's not, so you put the key in, the lock unlocks, but it still thinks it's locked, then that will work for you. But if the motor fails and your steering lock won't unlock, the column is physically locked still, then this will not help you. And what I'll do in the video is try and look at ways in which you could free up a locked steering lock and prevent that kind of thing from happening in the future. As well as the steering lock and the emulator, also on the subject of steering wheels, I'm going to be fitting this heated steering wheel element with a nice leather cover over the top of it. Some Land Rovers do have a heated steering wheel as an option. I think that would be a really nice thing to have, especially on cold winter mornings. Hop in and the steering wheel's nice and warm, no need to wear gloves. Just got to kind of find a way to put this underneath the cover, and more difficult than that is actually somehow connecting it up. You can't just wire it up because the wire's going to wrap around the steering column as you turn the wheel. So that'll be an interesting video when I do that. So moving on round here, looking at some of these other things that I've got. LED bulbs, these are actually reverse light bulbs. I still haven't fitted those, I bought them about a year ago. I'm going to be fitting those LED reverse light bulbs, and I'll also look at LED bulbs in general. What is legal, what isn't legal, what works, what doesn't, what's too dim, too bright, and what flashes too fast. Okay, so an interesting video coming up looking at LED bulbs for the Freelander 2. This here is a crank sensor, and I've started to develop a waterproof housing for the connector. Okay, so there's the sensor, that's what the crank sensor looks like, and I've started making a kind of a 3D printed item which would go over there, and then you would plug on your connector and there'll be some sort of lid which seals this up, seals the connector, makes it waterproof so that no water gets in there, because crank sensor issues are very common and can lead to the car just cutting out and breaking down. It happened to me last year. The car started lurching, coughing, and just died. Replaced the crank sensor, the car was absolutely fine. The actual sensor isn't the weakest point. It's a what's called a Hall effect sensor. There's no moving parts in there, it's just a magnetic sensor that is measuring a toothed wheel behind the crank pulley. The weak point is the connector, because there are just sort of wires that come down here. It is the lowest connection on the engine, and it just gets covered in water and mud. Water gets in, corrodes the connections in here, and then the crank sensor stops working, stops sending a speed and top dead center signal to the engine, and then the computer doesn't know when to inject the fuel, so it just doesn't, and the car just stops. So if you've ever experienced a kind of jolt, sudden jolt, usually under acceleration, you pull out of a junction, you accelerate, and the car just gives a jolt, jerk, it's usually a sign of a crank sensor issue. Don't ignore it. That's what I did, and I ended up breaking down at the side of the road, couldn't start the engine. Okay, these crank sensors are about £40 from Euro Car Parts. It's worth just buying one and keeping it in the glove box, even if you don't fit it straight away. This here is one of my little development projects. This here is a new headlight release lever. Let me see if I can show you one of the headlight levers. Okay, the one down there is completely broken off. Okay, so the idea is that this will connect on behind there in place of the standard headlight release lever, which is a black rod. Let's see if you can see on this one here. There you go, you can just about see it there. It's a sort of, looks like a black Lego axle thing there, really weak, and they break off really easily. So I'm looking at making a much chunkier one. It'll either be 3D printed or more likely cast in a rigid polyurethane. So I'll sort of make an item out of 3D print and then make a mould and cast that. Also been looking as a little back burner project at some kind of gauge pod. I want to put like a triple gauge pod on the center speaker grille. There's no speaker underneath it, certainly not on my car, so I thought that would be a good place to put triple gauges in a nice pod. Bought 3 of these nice Pro Sport stepper motor gauges. I've gone for oil pressure, voltmeter and turbo boost. I thought they would look really nice mounted on the center of the dashboard. That project was started and then just put on hold. I'd like to finish that off. So moving on round, we now get to my brackets. Okay, so these are grill mounted brackets for either spotlights, so you can have a pair of spotlights or a light bar mounted on your grill. Here are a couple of photos of the spotlights and light bars that have been fitted by other Freelander 2 owners using these brackets. I also sell amber strobe lights. Okay, so I've got 2 of them fitted to my car here. These have been on for a couple of years. They work very well. The front piece is completely different for the amber strobes because it needs to mount these LED lights to it, but the rear parts are the same. Okay, so that is what the rear part looks like for pre-facelift, which is the same grille as I've got here. The spotlight brackets and the amber strobes use that part for the pre-facelift, and then for the facelift it looks like that. Why is it different? It's because the diamond shaped hole here, whilst it looks very similar between pre-facelift and the facelift grille, the rear surface is quite different. Okay, so there's a sort of like diamond shaped tube on the facelift, hence this rear piece here, which kind of goes in the back of the diamond shaped tube, and then the pre-facelift grille needs this kind of triangular piece there. It also has a diamond shaped piece there, but it's a little bit different. Okay, because the back surface of this grille is sloping, whereas it isn't on the facelift model. If you would like to buy these brackets or the strobes or any of the other parts that I make, they're available on my website, beavispits.com. These spotlight brackets were previously available in a sort of a standard and a heavy duty variant. I'm now only going to be selling the heavy duty ones. Okay, so the standard ones were 10 millimeters thick instead of 13 millimeters thick like this one, and they had less plastic around the hole, the mounting hole. Everyone was buying the heavy duty ones, so I'm going to discontinue the standard ones. These are printed using a 3D printer. They are solid printed, so there's no infill gaps inside. That they are printed in sort of diagonal striped layers, one on top of the other, with solid filament. They're quite heavy and they're quite strong as well. The load rating for these ones is a 1 kilogram lamp on each, or a 2 kilogram light bar across 2 of them. I also do rear strobe brackets, so you can have flashing amber strobes on the grille as well as on the crossbar on the roof. Other brackets that I'm currently developing include the roof light bar brackets. Okay, so these brackets here that I developed are very nice, but they didn't fit perfectly. They're a little bit of a tight fit. So what I'm trying to do is develop better ones that have better clearance, but also are easily castable in polyurethane. what I found is the one piece bracket just was very, very difficult to cast in a silicone mold without air bubbles and problems like that. So I decided to try a two-piece approach where we would actually have 3 holes there, and then sort of bolt that together. I'm not sure if that is really going to work. The advantage of that is that then I can make different shaped ones of these pieces for different length light bars. So I could sort of have a 42 and a straight 40, and then maybe the other way around for a 38 or 36 inch light bar. That was the idea, but I'm worried that this is just not going to be strong enough. It just takes one branch from a tree to hit the light bar and it could break that off. Okay, so I'm still trying to work out which is best. A 2-part mold and then bolt the cast items together, or one thing that I might try is actually what's called a 2-part mold. Okay, so you use clay, you get your fully printed item and embed it into clay, pour silicone over the top, take that off, take the clay off, spray a kind of a wax mold release spray onto the first silicone layer, and then pour more silicone on to make a 2-part silicone mold that you can sort of peel apart. That is what is required for irregular shaped items like this that don't have a sort of a natural flat surface to just pour under gravity. Okay, so if the part is quite complicated, then it really does need a 2-part silicone mold. I've never tried a 2-part silicone mold before. I'm going to try it with this clay and see if I can make light bar brackets that are just cast in one piece. If it doesn't work, I'll go back to the 2-piece design, but that's work in progress. Other brackets that I'm working on at the moment, the air horn brackets. So originally I 3D printed these air horn mounting brackets. However, in the heat of the summer, the underbonnet temperatures got a little bit warm and the brackets started to sort of sag and warp a bit under the heat of the engine bay. So what I have now done is actually cast these out of polyurethane. This looks like 3D print, but it's not. It's actually hard, rigid polyurethane. So I made a mold out of silicone of a 3D printed item and then poured in the polyurethane to get something that is much stronger and doesn't deform with the high temperatures under the bonnet. I'm continuing to enhance the design, and this is the latest 3D printed prototype. I've put in these strengthening ribs here because the first guy who fitted one of these actually managed to snap that whole piece off there. Okay, so I have added some strengthening pieces here, and I'm going to be making another mold. This is just a rough prototype print, and I'll be making another mold to test that one out. As well as improving the strength, I've also added some little blobs in there. You can see those little kind of little dome pieces. Now the idea there is that it will help the bracket actually clip in, so it clips into those holes there. Okay, so you actually fit the bracket in and then it clicks in and it's solid. Then you can easily pull it back out, but it is positively held in. Okay, so it's not just sort of flapping about loose like this one. Okay, so this one is loose, it's not going to go anywhere because the bonnet closes here, but I've never been too happy with that just sitting there loose. Okay, it's going to rattle around, so it does need those little domes to kind of click it into those holes. Here is a spare air filter housing. I've recently done a video on this washer here, okay, or washer or diaphragm The factory rubber washer that sits in the bottom of the air filter housing often falls out or disintegrates, meaning that your air filter box has a large hole in the bottom that can allow water to get sucked up into the air filter. So that sits that way round. How does it go? It goes, yeah, that way round. Water can come up through that hole into the air filter, and eventually, if you're not careful, it can get into the engine and could ruin the engine by causing hydraulic lock. I've seen it happen. There's a video that I've just uploaded. My last video looked at what can go wrong with this, and also looked at various replacement rubber washers. This one here is available from Homebase or the range, and it just needs a little screw or a bolt putting in there to hold that, and that will stop water getting in, but it will still allow water to drain out if water does somehow get in there through the wing here, either from rain or washing the car with a hose pipe. Water's ended up getting down into the bottom of the air filter housing. Needs to be able to drain out. But when you go wading, if you drive through a ford or a deep puddle, you don't want water getting up through there. Very, very important. What else have I been working on lately? This is a catch can, okay, so oil catch can. I did a video showing fitting of this duct here in place of the pans, pipes, factory church organ kind of harmonic resonant chamber duct, which causes so many problems because it doesn't seal properly. Oil leaks out, dribbles down onto the hot turbocharger. The vent pipe from the bottom of the engine comes up and, as standard, goes into this duct. All of that black oily rubbish goes then down the duct through the turbocharger, and eventually ends up, once it's gone through your intercooler, it ends up at your throttle body here, where it will coat the throttle body butterfly, and more serious than that, it will coat the temperature sensor and the manifold absolute pressure sensor. If those get scummed up with oily grime, then your car is really not going to run very well. Okay, so I decided to do away with the factory duct and route the engine crankcase to an oil catch can, okay, which separates out the oil. Now, the output from the catch can you can route back into the intake. It's not got so much oil in then, it's just sort of fumes. I do that for the MOT for emissions reasons, but the rest of the year I just vent it down to a breather under the car. Okay, so I don't want fumes going in to my engine. I want my engine to breathe nice, clean, oxygen-rich air, not inert gas that's already been burnt. That's no good for performance at all. The catch can that I've got fitted there is commonly available from eBay and Amazon. It's quite a nice little one. It's got a little dipstick there, so you can actually see how much oil has been collected, and then the bottom of the catch can can just sort of unscrew to empty out that oil every couple of months. One issue with this catch can is that whilst for a manual gearbox it fits nicely, it's got a lot of room around there, the automatic gearbox has an oil cooler down there. It's actually a transmission fluid oil cooler, and the hoses for that get very close to the bottom of the catch can. I've never been too happy with that. If I try and raise the catch can up, then these hoses will hit the underside of the air filter housing. So it's a bit of a tight fit. So what I've been doing lately is having a look at alternative catch cans. These ones are very, very similar. They're actually slightly larger capacities, 500 milliliter instead of 300. The bottom part of the can unscrews. The advantage of these is that that could be mounted there a little bit higher up, and the hoses you can actually rotate the mounting bracket, so the hoses could come out this way. Okay, so you could have one going that way and one out here, meaning that the catch can actually sit a little bit higher, give more clearance for the automatic transmission fluid cooler. Here's a slightly different one. It looks virtually the same. It's just blue instead of black, but it does have not only a removable cap in the top, so you could actually put a breather on there and then route that back to the duct, but it also has the option of a little drain cock at the bottom, so you could actually drain off the oil into a pipe or down a hose quite easily. No need to unscrew the can, you just open the tap, and all the oily slime and gunk that catches in the can can be easily drained off. Watch this space with those. That's going to be a project that I'm going to be doing soon, looking at a better catch can and redesigning the bracket that this one mounts on. I'm also going to do a test to see if the car runs better with the catch can recirculating or vented to atmosphere. Some people say it seems better with it recirculating, others disagree. I do feel that it runs better with pure air going into the engine rather than the fumes. However, some people say that they actually get better performance with it recirculating. So the only way to see really is to do an economy run and also some sort of performance tests, like a 30 to 70 mile an hour acceleration test, and just see what comes out best. What else am I going to be working on this year? I'm going to be fitting some braided brake hoses. Land Rover recommend that the rubber hoses are changed every 10 years, so mine are well overdue that change. I'm also going to be doing a video or a series of videos looking at my lift spacers. Okay, so here are the suspension lift spacers that I make, and I sell those on my website. They're made of firm polyurethane rubber. That is the rear spacer, and that is the front spacer there, with its sort of dished shape to fit the shock absorber top plate. Okay, so these are available in various colours: black, red, yellow or orange. The front spacer is 20 millimeters thick where the bolts go through. It's about 25 millimeters thick at the outer edge. The rear spacers are available in 30 or 40 millimeter thickness. Why are they different thicknesses? Why don't I make 30 millimeter thick fronts? Well, it's because the bolts that go through these are at an angle. So if this spacer gets any thicker, then the bolt heads where they come up through the bodywork actually need to move outwards because they're slanted at an angle, and you end up in the situation where the factory holes are not in the right place. So if I was to make thicker spacers, then you'd have to elongate those holes quite a lot to get the bolts to actually thread into the top plate. That is why I only do 20 millimeter. There is another reason. From what I've seen, the front suspension rises at a quicker rate, so a 20 millimeter spacer will actually raise the car about 25 to 30 millimeters. The rear is more of a 1-to-1 ratio, so a 30 millimeter spacer gives a 30 millimeter lift. Because the front rises slightly quicker, you don't need a thicker spacer on the front to give a level lift. In fact, a 20 millimeter front and a 30 millimeter rear will give you about 30 millimeters all round. It certainly looks that way. The car looks quite level. I also do a 40 millimeter rear if you would like the rear end a little bit higher to give extra clearance for the fuel tank, or if you carry a lot of tools or heavy equipment in your boot and it sort of weighs the back of the car down a bit, then you can lift with a slightly thicker spacer just to even things out. Okay, I'll do a video series on the fitting of those spacers soon. I've already fitted rear spacers to my car, and there is a video on my channel showing that, but that was the older design, the older 20mm rear. I'm going to replace those spacers with either the 30 or the 40, and I will also be fitting the front spacers to the front of my car. I was going to do that last year, but then Powerful UK, who also have a very well-known successful YouTube channel, decided to fit some of my spacers to their Project Freelander 2, and they did a really good series of 3 videos showing the fitting of the front and the rear. They also looked at the suspension and measured the resulting lift. They then took the car with the spacers fitted to an off-road day and gave them a really good testing, and the results were very good. They were very pleased with the spacers. So if you'd like to see more on my lift spacers and how to fit them and what the car looks like with those fitted, then look up Powerful UK on YouTube and have a look at their videos. I'll put a link to their videos in the description of this video. Okay, I'm going to leave it there for now. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you to those of you who are already subscribed. If you're not subscribed, click the button to subscribe. I'm also on Instagram at Beavis Pits. You can have a look at the photos that I put up of all the work that I'm doing on my car. Thank you very much for watching. I look forward to showing you lots of exciting videos this coming year. Thank you, bye.